Hey, fellow patriots, I'm Bree.
And I'm Blaze. Some call me Pa. It has been said that we have 4 boxes to keep ourselves free. These are the soap box, the ballot box, the jury box, and the ammo box.
And we are the 4th box. We are here to arm you with enough information, resources, and skills to take back your freedom, increase your self-sufficiency, and inspire you to join in the fight against tyranny.
Thomas Jefferson said, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty." Thank you for joining us and for joining in this fight.
Welcome back to the 4th box. Hey guys, just one thing before we get started. I wanted to jump in quickly to let our listeners know that after recording this, before posting, we heard from our friend Jared out in South Dakota, who you all may remember has joined us several times with Mike Klipfel. Jared let us know that Mike had to go into emergency surgery, and we just wanted to share that with our audience because we know we have a lot of believers here, and we are asking that the Lord lift him and his family up during this time. And for those of you listening, if you could just keep him and his family in prayer today and through the week, it would be so appreciated. You all know him as Magic Mike, and we are just truly hoping that he pulls out strong and everything goes a-okay. So just a quick shout out before we get started to send some prayers over to Mike and his family. Alrighty, guys. Alrighty, everybody, what's up? Welcome back to another week at the 4th Box Podcast. Always happy to be joining you. Tonight, we are coming at you with some familiar faces. We've got Denny and Brant here with us tonight. Very excited. We're going to have a bit of a group conversation. But first off, hey guys, thanks to both of you for being here.
My pleasure.
Yeah, as always, welcome. Welcome, 4th Box.
All right, Dad, now you can take it.
Okay. Welcome, 4th Box faithful. It's great, as always, to be coming to you. A beautiful afternoon here in central Pennsylvania. High blue skies and some puffy white clouds floating by, about mid-70s. A real nice day. And as always, we come to you from our virtual Buckman Tavern, where we like to throw back a cold one now and then, talking about the problems of the day. And tonight I am toasting the armed civilian, and I know his name's bouncing around, but I'm not going to use it until we're sure that's all cleared up. But I'm saluting the armed civilian and the off-duty state trooper out in Twin Falls, Idaho, who engaged the shooter and quite probably prevented a lot of carnage from not taking place. Subsequently, the shooter did end up dead, but there was two civilians that engaged that shooter and stopped it. And, you know, our old saying related to that is, what stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. So for all the Looney Tunes out there who want to take the guns away, just remember the ones that's going to be saving your bacon is a good guy with a gun. So I'm saluting those fellas out there. Cheers.
Cheers.
And also, the quote today, 3/5 to 2/3 of the federal budget consists of taking property from one American and giving it to another. Were a private person to do the same thing, we'd call it theft. When government does it, we euphemistically call it income redistribution. But that's exactly what thieves do. Redistribute income. Income redistribution not only betrays the founder's vision, it's a sin in the eyes of God. And that comes from a contemporary of ours, Walter Williams. And I thought that was great. When you think about a lot of the problems that we're faced with here today, it simply boils down to that very point made in that.
Yeah, good one.
Okay, moment in history. We continue to do that since we are in the 250th year since celebrating our Declaration of Independence back a couple weeks ago. On August 15th, the Battle of Roanoke Inlet, North Carolina, a British foraging expedition landed near Roanoke Inlet in North Carolina, and they were seen by Captain Dennis Dage, who led his independent militia company in an attack on the expedition. The Americans inflicted heavy casualties on the British and took many of them prisoners. So that was 250 years ago on August 15th. So we like to tie in some of those historical events as we march through this very significant year in our history.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for sharing, as always. Excited to get started with kind of a new concept we have for the show. We always bring new ideas and say we're going to return to them, and then we never do. So this is a first. Maybe we'll do it again. Maybe we won't. This is what I'm going to call the millennial versus boomer segment, where we're going to look at some current events and I guess trending themes in what's going on today in politics in general, and get a little bit of a feel for what the quote-unquote millennial generation has to say about it and the boomer generation has to say about it. So we're going to ask a question and then we're going to pose it to both sides. And as all of you know, our opinions are probably going to be a little bit on the outskirts of what the average American might say, but I'm hoping we still get a little bit of contrast and a little bit of differing ideas so that we can compare what is the newer generation thinking about this, what is the older generation thinking about this, and what does that difference mean? And where do we find common ground and how can we use that to our advantage?
Awesome. Hey, Bree, if you could, I just wondered, are you able off the cuff to kind of spell out what those two generations, what are the lines that establish those generations?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's pull it up quickly because I don't know. And to be honest, I know we're probably not perfectly within them. Brant is probably a little bit younger than the true.
Of millennium. What? So boomers 46 to 64.
I've got millennial. Millennial is 81 to 96. So right on the cusp, I think, for everybody. Yeah, but barely.
Barely. Ew. Yeah, so boomer is 1946 to 64, currently 62 to 80. And then millennials is 30 to 45. I'm 28. I'm just going to jump in with millennials.
And that's a good question, I guess, if we're going to pose it as that. But yeah, I mean, I think this is close enough. So we're going to make that work.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Ready to roll.
Cool. Yeah. So, age before beauty, obviously. So once we ask the question, we'll pass it over to you guys first. How's that sound?
Perfect.
Okay, cool. So the first one is pretty broad, not necessarily about one specific thing or event, but I think it's important. Has social media improved or harmed public discourse?
Do you want to weigh in on that first, Denny?
Yeah, I can. Personally, I think it's improved it because of the wide range of different social media coverage that you get now. And I think it's becoming much more popular. So I think it's helped, but of course that's a double-edged sword depending on where you choose to get your information. So yeah, a short answer, yes, I think it's improved it a lot, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm gonna weigh in with Denny's double-edged sword, and I think it does provide both benefits, and that is the dissemination of information rather than going through the filters of the traditional media. We now have, with the social media, the opportunity to share ideas and share voices without running through those filters, which we know here very much provide a distorted view. The downside to me is I think younger people, probably your group, the millennials and them afterwards, have lost some of their ability that was inherent in socializing person to person. You see everybody sitting around looking at their phone or their electronic device, and they're sitting right beside somebody that they could be having a discussion with, but nobody's talking to each other. They're all looking at the phone. I think that is a downside. I think there are some social repercussions coming from the long-term effects of kids not talking to each other.
Yeah.
Good point.
100%. I mean, I'll lead us. Oh, Denny, keep going if you've got more to add. Sorry.
I was just going to add that I seen an interesting meme the other day. It was titled something to the effect of "The Eagles had it right" in the song "Hotel California." One of the verses there, we are all prisoners of our own device, and it showed somebody sitting there with an iPhone. So kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'll lead it into our group answering here, and I think that if we're just thinking about public discourse on its face, just people having the ability to communicate about politics or any other current event, any other news story, whatever that might be, I think it has improved almost objectively, in my opinion, because we have, to you guys' point, so much more opportunity to see things from different perspectives and different angles, which was harder to do, harder to access before, if you even saw anything at all. Is it harming the way that we're interacting and forming relationships and strengthening human connection? Yes. But I think that's a little bit of a different question. But I also think that's objectively true. And, in fact, I'm going to bring this up before I pass it to Brant. Brant and I had a very funny situation earlier where I was in the grocery store, and I guess I never realized how much I rely on my phone when I'm in the grocery store to do like a little bit of research. So I needed an answer to a question about, how long pickled onions lasted in the fridge. And I couldn't pull it up on my phone. My phone wasn't working. So I called Brant and I asked him the question. I said, hey, can you look this up for me? And so he and I kind of had this funny thought where, what if we just did that every time when we had a quick question, rather than Googling it, which is so easy to do because it's so available to us? Why don't we just call somebody, a friend, a family member, especially somebody maybe we haven't talked to for a while? Like, what a great reason to spark a conversation. And maybe it's a little silly, but we just thought, wow, this is really something. We really did something here. Brant?
Yeah, that was nice. That was a nice realization we had. But jumping back to the question, has social media improved or harmed public discourse? I do think that, I don't know. It's hard for me to say that I think that it's improved. I think that there's more of it. Maybe not more of it. I think that there could be more of it. Like at any time, you can go on social media and constantly find any sort of discussion, debate, or anything regarding anything, any sort of politics. However, it also gives people, I feel like, inflated confidence, and that's where you kind of get your keyboard warriors, where there's people that are just extremely ignorant and aggressive. Doesn't matter what they're arguing for or against, but I think it leads to pretty harmful discourse rather than just beneficial. There's a lot of spite and hatred, and that can come out of that and grow out of that from looking at it from a social media standpoint. However, I do think it is encouraging more of it, and I think that ultimately that is a good thing. People are talking, and it's kind of goes both ways for me.
Yeah, good answer. Anything you guys want to chime in with before we move on?
Well, I want to jump in just momentarily before we, and maybe Denny has a remark also. But I think there's a certain dehumanizing effect by the whole thing of communicating electronically without voice to voice and person to person contact, and I think that, to me, that works to the benefit of the deep state / globalists that are certainly making an effort to dehumanize us and to get us apart and all of those things. And the only other comment, since we do have a brand new one that's come into our family over the last couple of weeks, one of the things that's just staggering to me is when you see a baby or a child that can't even really walk yet, and they're sitting in a stroller or one of these baby carrying things, and they have some kind of electronic device in front of them. I don't see that there's any good that comes out of that. That baby needs to be interacting with human beings and developing those skills long before we need to worry about dropping some kind of electronic device in front of them.
Yeah. Denny, anything else from you?
Yeah, I agree, Blaze, with that. But I guess it's here, and I don't see it going away. So we're going to have to live and accept that. I agree. I've seen the same thing. It's almost like it's electronic babysitter or to keep that child entertained for a while. But getting back to, and Brant, you're the one that kind of sparked this in me, is I think, or at least some of the podcasts or shows that I watch, the influencer or whoever is running that platform can kind of control, like some of the, you're talking about the interference and the arguments or whatever, they can limit that somewhat. My impression, I'm not by any means up to the technology and what's capable, but again, it comes down to, like you said, you can find whatever you want, whatever you're looking for on the internet. So it kind of comes down to a personal selection of who you want to listen to, and if you're going to put up listening to some of the bullshit that goes on.
Yeah, and I guess so. You were kind of cutting in and out there. If it's okay, I think I'm going to kind of try to sum up what he said if it came across kind of crappy over. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, but you were saying that, like, one of the podcasters you were listening to, maybe there was some discourse on some of the comments, and they were kind of able to regulate that, so there's not necessarily any like spiteful debate going
Right.
back. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I do agree with that. However, like, I'll see it on like stuff up here by me, right? So like I'll go on a Facebook page to get a fishing update and like see what the run is like, right? Like how many salmon are running up this river down here. And next thing you know, somebody's like, well, the count's super low this year and this is who's to blame for that. And then they'll pull in a politician and next thing you know, the entire comment section on a public fishing page has now become a political battlefield. And it's like, and that's where I'm saying it's like, it's kind of a good thing because you're able to have conversation. It's creating this platform where it's like, hey, this is a problem and it could potentially be tied to a decision made, or maybe not. But as good as it is that there is a conversation, it almost always, at least on social media, at some point will fall into, it is no longer a debate. It is no longer an argument. It is just people going after people's throats. And I think that that's the harmful side of social media, whereas like oftentimes if you're conversing with people face to face, I feel that very rarely does it ever actually come to that point because you're able to see that person as a person, not just words on a computer. So as good as social media is, because it does encourage it, it is easy to go and see lots of different sides and lots of different things. I just do think it often deteriorates into garbage.
Good point.
Yeah. I think that was a good answer to kind of, round it all out. I agree with that. As much as I think it has improved, and I even said that in the beginning, I think it has improved public discourse a lot. There are so many harmful components of it, and I think the more advanced it is, the more harmful it becomes, especially as we have AI kind of entering the world of, AI bots throwing their 2 cents in, and we don't know who's behind those. How many corporations might be funding this bot or that bot or whatever it might be, and so now you have these other ideas that aren't even human generated, and then you have photos and videos that are also AI generated, and it further obscures what's real and what's not. So I think the more kind of further along we get with social media, the worse it becomes. In the early days, I think it was great. And the further down the line we go, the more harmful it becomes. So I guess time will tell. But it seems like it is probably getting worse and more harmful from where we're sitting now. If everybody's good, though, we'll move on to the next question because we're already, we're just flying through time here. Okay, cool.
Let's do it.
All right, so a little bit different here. What are your thoughts on the Fauci diary situation?
All right, Denny, I'll go first on this one if that's all right. In a way, this ties into what Brant was just suggesting, and that is pretty much how everything becomes politicized. You're talking about fishing on a fishing page, and all of a sudden, somehow it's degraded to a political conversation. And the striking thing to me was the contrast between the political parties on how this whole Fauci thing is viewed. First of all, let us state for the record that some of us, clean back at the beginning of this farce, were stating some of the very things now that are being mentioned in the Fauci diaries and other places as this information becomes public. And how anybody on one side or the other can be unwilling to listen or to be objective about new information coming into the argument or the debate when there was millions of people that were adversely affected and or died as a result of this. How anybody can close the door and simply make it a political argument is beyond my comprehension. I think at some point, and that goes back to the dehumanizing effect that I was mentioning in the other question. Have we become so dehumanized that we can marginalize the death of people for the sake of a political party or a political agenda? And that was the most striking thing to me as I watched some of this stuff unfold related to Fauci.
Yeah, to me, I don't know. My first thought was, why now? Why did it take so long to get to this point? And I thought, well, it's a good distraction ploy to get people to focus on this rather than something that they don't want them to focus on. And I don't know. It's I my small circle of people that I do talk to, I got kind of mixed reactions to it. Some were totally shocked, like it's the first time they had ever heard it, which surprised me. And some were just more pissed off than they were 4 years ago or 6 years ago, whatever. So I think it's a planned distraction, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the exact same thought as you, which is why now? Timing feels strange to me because the way that I see it, around 70% of the politicians, the federal government elected officials that are in office right now were in office during COVID. So why all of a sudden are we so concerned about this thing and all of a sudden we're going to pretend like we just found all this information out when that's very likely not the case? This is very likely that most of these people knew at least some of these things 6 years ago, and they're just now responding to it and acting like we got to do something about this. We need to work our way around this pardon because this guy needs to be prosecuted. There need to be arrests made. Well, really? Why is it just happening 6 years later? Nobody seemed to care before. The same politicians that now have this stance are the ones that were telling you that you weren't allowed to hike outside or go to church. So I'm having a hard time understanding and reckoning, why we're putting on such a show. And for me, I think it is kind of something that we talked about before. I think this is, and I've recently heard the term for it, which I didn't know, but I've known the concept or the tactic where, a little bit of truth is divulged. Not the whole thing. They just give you like a little tidbit so that they can kind of manage the perception of that truth by giving you a little bit what you want to hear. And it's called the limited hangout, apparently, in the public relations world. And I kind of think that's what this is. I think that this is just a way to dangle that carrot in front of us and say, here's a little bit of truth without actually having to disclose it. Because with them just presenting things that are allegedly in the diary and Fauci just saying, I plead the fifth, nobody's disclosing anything. And nothing has to come of this. But they're giving those of us who have been demanding it something. So we feel like we got something. That's kind of what I think this is. I think it's just one of those carrots that they throw at the peasants. That's how it feels to me. Brant?
Yeah, so I'm first going to start off by saying for me, there's a lot of unknowns. So if I say something that's incorrect and somebody knows, correct me. But yeah, I agree with you. I agree with all of you. The timing feels weird. All the circumstances feel weird. It does feel weird to me, like exactly what you just said, where it's like, okay, maybe they are giving us a snippet, but why now? like what's necessarily happening right now, because a lot of times you see stuff like this unfolding when there's something else shady going on, right? Like when, when Trump first starts making moves on Iran, that's like, everybody's like, oh, is this a diversion? But then the next day, then there's something else. And it's like, oh, is this a diversion from Iran? And it's like, there's constantly that going on. And I don't want to call it a lull because there's always things happening, but like what's happening right now that would cause this information to be divulged? Additionally, like and I might be wrong about this, but like, how did the diaries, how are they founded and released? Like, I think that's a kind of all a sketchy thing as well, if I'm not mistaken, just from some of the reading I was doing was like, how did Rand Paul end up with this and end up releasing it? Like, in what world would that have happened? And I think that question feeds into exactly what you're saying, Bree, where, okay, like perfect time to drop some carrots for the peasants. But yeah, I guess I don't even really know I don't even know what that would do. Like I don't understand what benefit there would be. So honestly, this one right now kind of just totally has me scratching my head. I can't really say much more than that. I do think it is all very bizarre, but I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, you make a good point. Like the diary suddenly being in the hands of Rand Paul because it was found on apparently a government server, like as if you're writing your diary on your work computer. That First of all, that it doesn't even make sense. So that's why I'm like, how do we even know any of that is real? But to your point, if they just make all of this up and they put on this whole show theater of this trial, this hearing, da 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 da, when we know the guy already has a pardon, and oh, now we're going to get him on contempt, which no, you're not. Why? What's the point? What's behind it? What are they covering up? And, that's always the question.
I would offer a suggestion, and to me, I didn't even think about it because I inherently thought this when the whole thing started rolling out. Remember, the Republicans are in control at the moment, but we're coming up on a pivotal election, that being the midterms, and always between July and the end of October, there are going to be events where the people in power or both sides are trying to shape the narrative going into the midterm. So whether this was something that was all put together with the intention of coming out in close enough proximity to the midterm that they could keep the rabble going about that particular conversation and maybe not lose the House or maybe reshape how things are going, that to me was immediately where my thought went about that. And I continue to look back over the years when there was midterm elections and even presidential elections, always in the last 4 or 5 months leading up, there's events that are specifically either presented to the public or shaped for the public with the intention of helping change what appears to be coming in that election cycle. And I fully suspect that this is an effort to get the Republicans on some solid ground. See, and this whole narrative, I suspect, was used for that end, if not other things.
Yeah, that certainly could make sense. I think that's definitely valid.
Well,
Denny, anything else to add from you?
No, I think that covers it pretty good.
Okay. All right. Put a bow on it and we'll move on to the next one.
Okay.
Okay. What are your thoughts on the migrant invasion of about 60,000 plus Moroccans into Spain that happened over the weekend?
Well, I guess I'm not real familiar with how far these migrants had to travel to get to where their destination was. But my immediate thought on the whole thing was it has to be, there's a lot of logistics. You get 60,000 people, you don't just move 60,000 people without food, water, whatever, shelter. So to me, it was planned. It was funded by whatever you want to call them, deep state or people in charge around the world. It's not a natural event. It had to be planned and organized, and I think that takes a lot of money and a lot of resources. So it was a planned event for whatever reason, I don't know.
Yeah, good points, Dad.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Denny on my gut feeling is that this is part of an immigrant invasion that's taken place all over Europe, quite honestly. And I don't think it's without being orchestrated by those Epstein class or whatever you want to call the global elitists. And we learned with one of our guests not too long ago that we don't want to call them elitist, although that's what they think they are. I think there are certain powers behind the scenes that are manipulating these sort of activities. The global conflicts, the manipulation of currency, the immigration, the wokeness that's allowing immigration. I think this is all working, as we've talked many times, to the benefit of those who want to rule the world. They're taking down customary borders and flooding borders with immigrants, changing longtime cultures within European countries, many of the European countries, and some of them are starting to push back, but mainly this has been going on for a couple of years. Spain's had a big influx with the Moroccan thing, but also here in this country, there's been, basically an immigrant invasion, and these were designed to change the culture, to change the attitude in these countries, which is basically a tearing down of the free speaking and free thinking world. That's my estimation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mostly agree. Brant asked me before if there was a certain event that triggered this mass migration, and I'm not able to find one, which does beg the question, well, then how did you get this many people, this many bodies to move at once? Like, it's just weird that could just happen naturally. And to the point that Denny made, it does take a lot of logistics, and there's a lot of things that have to happen for that to happen. The city that they migrated into is only a city of 80,000 people. So imagine 60,000 people coming into a city of 80,000 people. That's very overwhelming. That's hard to imagine. Going off what you said a little bit, Dad, I think it's indicative of third world migrants coming into first world countries as part of a much larger image and problem that we have around the world. I do think it's orchestrated to some degree. Why? I don't know. I mean, we can speculate all day long. I have theories, but for this specific case, I've seen a lot of suspicion online that there could be some indirect cause, maybe directly, but we'll say indirectly, by Trump and Netanyahu, because apparently Spain's Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, has been very outspoken about his criticism of the U.S.-Israel war on Iran, which I don't know. I have no way to know if that's true or not. It's just something that I've been seeing circulate a little bit. And it does make you wonder, because along those same lines, apparently Netanyahu has been supportive of the Moroccan movement into Spain, which seems weird because Muslims are supposed to be Israel's sworn enemy. And Morocco is made up of 98 or 99% Muslims. So all of a sudden, when they're invading a country that is run by a guy that's been bad-mouthing Israel, all of a sudden they're pro that country. These are the things that you have to say, like, what is going on? This doesn't line up. If you simply are going to look at patterns, these are patterns that just don't connect. So that's my take on it. I think it's indicative of a bigger problem, and I think it makes you, or should make you, question who's pulling the strings behind the scenes.
I think that exactly what you said is all a pretty good point. I've seen a little bit of what you're saying about that with being outspoken against some of the Israel-Iran complex, and yeah, I mean, this is kind of like a little bit of slap in the mouth if this were somehow or some way orchestrated. And yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's not an unrealistic thing. I think there's a lot of things happening like that are all being orchestrated and strings are being pulled like this. But like touching on Dad's point, yeah, I mean, this is a global crisis. This isn't just here. This is just a really big example of it happening right now, but it seems to be happening a lot more and all over the place. Additionally, I did read a few other things that I thought were kind of bizarre about it. One of them was and I don't remember the name of the city where all these Moroccan immigrants fled into. If anybody recalls, let me know. I think it begins with like a C or something.
Yeah, it's Quetta. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but I think it's Quetta.
I think you're right. But I seen something that like military was there, but they appeared to essentially move out of the way. And apparently some journalist or some news outlet or something was trying to get a statement from whoever governs the city, because the city, I believe, is an autonomous city from the rest of Spain.
I think that might be true, yeah.
And they were trying to get like an answer out of them as to essentially if they gave an order to the military to let them pass. And I don't think they ever like got an answer. But I mean, it's all just like there's so many weird interconnected like strings that like seem to be being pulled that are like nothing lines up. But yeah, ultimately, apparently, any sort of military force that was there was just letting these people through. And in what world, exactly like you were saying, what world are you going to let 60,000 people into an 80,000 person city? Like, if for no other reason other than the fact that now the 60,000 or 80,000 people that already live in the city are going to have a hard enough time surviving with this many immigrants in there. Like, take the immigration problem out of there. Now you have you literally have a humanitarian crisis for the citizens of the city. And it's like, it's crazy that nothing was done. So kind of tying back to what you said, where it's like, well, were potentially strings pulled by Israel as like, some sort of a slap on the wrist of like being outspoken about what they're doing. It's like, okay, well now kind of, I don't know. I don't think that it's that far-fetched, just kind of the way that it seems that it unfolded. Again, this is just from some of the stuff I'm reading, but I've seen it multiple places and it all seems equally bizarre.
Yeah. Do you guys have anything to say about that?
I think
the only thing I would say, I think both the millennial side and the boomer side are all in agreement that most certainly this was not organic. This is something that had been manipulated by other forces, other powers, other voices other than 60,000 people wake up one morning and decide we're going to move over to another place. I think we all can recognize that as almost 100% certain. And the only other thing I would suggest is, the Iran thing continues, the Ukraine thing continues, and, many of the people that I've listened to suggesting, the possibility of global food shortages because of the lack of fertilizers and diesel fuel production dropping off that's needed in agriculture all around the world, that the likelihood of mass immigration chasing food sources around is only going to go up over the next couple of years when the results of the activities going on in those two places today. And by the way, Ukraine is a significant exporter of grains and stuff to the world. I think as these conflicts continue to heat up, and by the way, it looks, the voices I'm hearing suggesting that both Russia and Iran are in control of the situations in both those theaters. But I'm only suggesting that I think the chance of mass immigration because of food shortages is on the horizon over the next 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, great point. Denny, anything else to add?
Well, getting back to Brant's point about the military maybe being part of this, just turning their head and or opening gates or doors or whatever, I think we've seen the same thing on our borders when we had a large amount of people coming through. So it's again, it goes really deep in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think the last thing I would say real quickly is I don't know if you guys felt strongly one way or the other about any of this, like anything that happened regarding this, but like staying on the concept of like boomers and millennials, I don't really think that the majority of people my age would even like really consider this any sort of like a care or concern. Like I think that a lot, like just kind of adding that in for like some fun food for thought. I think that if the majority of people that like even a lot of my friends that are relatively caught up with global news, I don't really think that many of them would really look at this as anything that they would personally like concern themselves with, which I don't know if I think that's I think that that's problematic, because I feel like anywhere that you're going to see where there's 60,000 immigrants, like like flooding into a different country, like you should probably be concerned regardless of where it is. But yeah, I don't know. Do you feel differently, Denny and Dad? Like, do you guys think that like if the majority of like your friends or people your age, do you think if they seen this headline they would put really any thought into it, or would it just be 60,000 migrants in some country?
I don't expect that most of them would even seen it or have
Right.
even had a inkling of a concern enter into their brain. I think largely the population, both in our age group, I can't speak for yours. I would say that your group is probably more dialed in than ours is.
I think that a lot of people my age actually are pretty, no, I don't want to say very dialed in, but at least in a smaller scale. Like I think people my age are really feeling the weight of like, to put it simply, like how am I going to buy a house? How am I going to afford a new car? How am I going to feed this or that? So it's like people do, in my opinion, seem to care about what's going on. Like, and I think we might get into this, so I don't want to say this right now, but like a lot of people my age that I would not necessarily consider as like in any way, shape, or form intrigued in anything that's happening politically have been outraged about like funding to Ukraine, funding to Israel, assistance to Israel, all because it's like, where's that money coming from? Like that could all be money that's staying, and circulating to benefit you and me and my friends and their friends and so on and so forth. Instead, like they're watching all of that leave and go to these, other scenarios that are unfolding on a global scale that aren't really affecting us. So I will say that I do think that people my age are more in tune and more concerned, but for stuff that's immediately affecting. Whereas like something like this could be affecting them, but like it's a ways down the road. Like it's the ripples of this that is going to affect them.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, I think that's super valid because I think that, and I'm speaking for you guys as the older generation without truly knowing this, but just, from what I see, your generation, obviously not you guys. You guys have been aware, right? You guys have been aware of these things going on. You've done what you can for many years of your life to try and spread the truth on these things, spread awareness, get involved however you can. But in general, across the board, the average boomer population, there is no urgency, there's no threat, there's no emergency. Whereas, like Brant, you're saying, for our generation, it's an emergency. I mean, people are concerned about right now, next week, where the food's going to come from, how the electricity is going to stay on. That's true. That's real. And I think that there is a need to pay attention, and maybe they're not always paying attention to the same things, but there is a need to have a little bit more involvement because it's urgent. We are out of time for our generation. And I think that's a really interesting point with any of the subjects that we're going through tonight, because it makes you wonder what's next and how, our generation approaches things and these ideas, knowing that we kind of are out of time in that way.
Yeah, I have to weigh in on this. This is just such a great opportunity with this contrast between boomers and millennials and Gen Zs and the rest of them. One thing you guys need to remember and never lose sight of, we started both these things. Americans started the conflict in Israel or in Iran, and we started the thing in Ukraine by our actions and our breaking of agreements. The United States started them. And we started them for the benefit of the military-industrial complex and the international banking community. And if the younger folks start recognizing that their future is clouded and made much more difficult because of the wealth-grabbing scumbellies that have started conflicts and continue to start conflicts around the world, which is stealing the wealth of this country, just as Brant pointed out, lessening opportunities and placing a tremendous burden on you guys and any children that you might be bringing in the world. We started that crap, and we started it to the benefit of those two groups. And when you guys start to get your arms around that, Perhaps that's when we can save this country, because our generation fell asleep at the wheel. This shit was going on while we were your age. We did nothing about it. But you guys, going all the way back to the first question tonight, have the opportunity to share these voices, share these ideas, and make more people aware, because your future is undoubtedly challenged by the crap that our generation let happen.
Yeah, phenomenal point. I really hope that our generation can be involved at the level that we need to be, because, you know, we are so burdened by these things that it's hard to, you know, kind of see the forest through the trees. Denny, anything you wanted to chime in with before we move to the next question?
No, I'm good.
All right. And Brant, you're all set too?
Yeah, Iris popping in to say hey.
Okay. Hi, Iris.
We've had other animals show up on the podcast. There's nothing wrong with that.
She won't leave me alone.
That's true. Okay, so we're actually going to pause it right here. We are about to be heading out as a little family trip, kind of. It's just me and Dad. It's not a full family trip, but we've got a little trip coming up. So next week we're going to be out of town. So we are going to split this episode in two so that you can listen to the second half of this episode, this conversation, next week, and we don't have to worry about the logistics of trying to do a podcast from the road. So if you made it this far in this episode, amazing. We are going to pick up exactly where we left off in this conversation with Brant and Denny next week. So please come back and join us to see the rest of the questions and how we all answered it. So before we wrap it up officially, we're still going to sign off the way that we always do with the Bible verse. So Dad, if you would go ahead and close us out.
Sure will. The Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in people who are trustworthy. And that comes from Proverbs 12 and 22.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great one. Alrighty, everybody. So there you go. Thanks for tuning in to this Millennial vs. Boomers episode. As we said, please come back and join us next week for part 2. Until then, stay vigilant.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate the support and truly love getting to share this message with anyone who wants or needs it. The best way for you to support the show is to subscribe, add a rating, and share with everyone you know. You can find us on Instagram, X, and at thefourthbox.com. We'll see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Stay vigilant.